Hey folks, welcome to a Snapp special episode of Snapp Tech Podcast. I'm here with Jasper and Enrique. We just spent day in FOSDEM. We're going to talk about a little bit of FOSDEM and what's going on in the EU tech, right? So what do you guys think about FOSDEM?
Well, it has been my first year. I don't have another event or baseline to compare with, but it has been overwhelming in a positive sense. It's been a lot of people everywhere. It was hard to enter some of the rooms, to walk through the halls, to get to talk with some of the folks that were present. But that's good. I think that showcases the interest that there is about around all these European topics, European software, digital sovereignty. And I personally enjoyed that it was not only just a technical conference. You could see rooms on Kotlin, right? We were talking with some of the Kotlin folks, but also talking about this non-technical aspect, which is on a more global sense, where are we going as a European Union and as European countries, and what do we want to have for our digital future?
Jasper, what was some of the companies you liked to meet? What are the people you met?
Yeah, so this is my second year at FOSDEM, actually. And I think it's hard to measure because there are so many people here. I think it's one of the largest open source conferences in the world. There's estimated about 8,000 people at FOSDEM. That's a lot of people. It sort of feels a bit more crowded this year than last year, which is hard to believe because last year was pretty crazy as well. So in terms of the companies, so the good thing about FOSDEM is it's really not commercial at all. So you don't get a lot of companies pushing stuff at you. What they call as a booth is really just like a plastic table about this big, and everybody gets the same one, no matter whether you're Red Hat with millions and millions of dollars of marketing budget, or you're like four guys with an open source project. So that's pretty cool. The guy that kind of stands out, they say it's a guy, it's a company, but the one that sort of stands out from yesterday is guys called Shift. And Shift sell mobile phones designed in Germany. I don't think they're actually manufactured in Germany, but designed in Germany. But they're very modular. You can repair pieces. The battery can be taken out. You have the right to repair. And they're very mature products, really, really, really good. So that was probably the biggest surprise in a way. I haven't checked out all the other stands. That's something to do today. But it was pretty good. And then, like Enrique said, I actually did the mostly non-technical tracks yesterday, mostly around EU policy, public infrastructure, EU, sort of the CRA or Cyber Resilience Act tracks and that sort of thing. So there's a lot more, it feels like this year, around policy and these sort of things. And of course, technology is there all the time, but that's also just my feeling. There's a little bit more non-technical tracks this year.
There's definitely a lot of buzz about moving away from American tech. World's gone a bit shit, and we kind of have to move away from that one. And feels like in the past we live in this kind of a bubble of, we kind of understood that there's a little bit of a problem with this thing, but the bubble's getting really big. Everybody's talking about it. Like every conference you go in Europe, somebody's talking about it, and there's real kind of drive to try to get back some of the control in Europe and move to European tech and all of those things. But it's quite difficult. There's companies like Nextcloud, Collabora. We talked with Collabora yesterday. And they're doing Collabora is basically an office suite that is focused on top of LibreOffice, the collaboration aspect. Google Docs, live editing, all of this stuff. Super important. We can't go back into static Office documents anymore. It doesn't work anymore in this world. So somebody's doing that one. But of course, there's a lot of problems. But the cool thing about this, like these guys, they're not here there to sell their product. They're telling what they do, and they're there to ask people to contribute. They're there to ask people to report bugs and all of those things. With the discussion with these collaborators people, for example, it's like, guys, just report bugs. And if you have a problem, report bugs. Please do that. And be really looking into this. There's this feeling in the open source community that the bugs don't go into empty. Like if you report a bug to Google, nothing happens.
For sure.
But
Yeah, he
now
was even
here's
taking notes, right? Like this guy
Yeah.
was like writing on his phone, like, okay, these guys are having problem with this.
But you get like feeling everywhere that everybody's
Yeah.
working to do stuff. But you mentioned this before, saying it feels like in open source everybody's doing something, but there's no common direction. Everybody's going different directions a little bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's got their own personal interests, and that's a little bit tricky, right? Because open source has often been. I mean, you'll see it at FOSDEM. You'll get people who are really interested. There's a track today about railway data. You know, for some people that's super passionate topic. Some people it's a business topic, but it's super niche, right? And there's a side to open source which is about just following a passion, right? But the passion's great, and we need to have that still. But then to get away from the US big tech, we need not just passion, but we need sort of functionality, things that actually are maybe a bit boring, but serve the needs of groups of people, businesses or consumers or whoever. And I think that's a little bit the trick. It's like, how do you get open source that's not just driven by passion, but actually driven by the needs of the consumer and the customer? Because open source tends to be quite bottom up.
Yeah.
You know, it's started by people who start writing code rather than products in a commercial sense. So it starts with people engaging with the market. So we need to kind of evolve our thinking about open source, in my view, that open source to be a successful sort of foundation for European tech needs to think about addressing the needs of the user first as a primary concern.
So open source, there's two interesting aspects of open source. Personally, because I've been in this like a design fanboy scene for a long time. So I try to ask companies how they tackle design. Because if you look at the open source and tech, you know, tech issues can be put down as tickets in a GitHub, right? Design can't really be like that, right? There's problems in design. You can say, okay, dark mode doesn't work. You can say, okay, this button is in the wrong place, but the decision where the button should go is a process of focusing on user needs and all of that. I think that's one of those issues I would like to see improve. If you want to have an adaptation, these companies like Google and Microsoft, they have big teams of figuring out user interaction. They do user stories, they use user-centered design, they do a lot of stuff up. And that's often missing in these projects because devs start to build stuff for themselves. I remember talking to a Debian maintainer some time ago, long time ago, saying, and I complained about usability, and they said, well, Debian is by developers, for developers, is supposed to be difficult to use. And that's a fair thing to say, well, fine, Debian, okay. But, you know, when you start to put that to people who actually does normal people, that doesn't work. So that would be an interesting topic to figure out how can we introduce a new process, not just a technical process in this one. But the other part is the money. When you talk about open source, there seems to be now quite a few companies who built their business really on top of proper open source. Nextcloud, Collabora, both they open source, but they built business there. Open project on top of Nextcloud ecosystem and all of those kind of things. So how do we get people to pay for building these projects that we need to do here in Europe to catch up with the American thing? Or is this the wrong way to think about it?
Yesterday was interesting because we had a few talks with folks, and they also have conflicting opinions, right?
Yeah.
It seems that one argument against, I think this was the conversation with the CEO from Collabora, the fact that you could get like public grants and support from European institutions. It has another side, and is that, okay, I give you like some money for 6 months, then I cut the funding, and then you can't maintain people hired, and you have to fire them. So this might not be ideal. There is also the directly charging users, as in subscriptions, where you are like, you pay €20 per month or 30 euros per month. You have direct access to the team. You can communicate with them. They are going to prioritize issues for you. They're going to try to solve your problems. I personally don't have super strong opinion, and probably a combination of them can work. Like, you could have a part of your project being financed by getting subscriptions from users, getting also support from institutions. And Also, the fact is that, which was part of the conversations yesterday also, right? The Americans have access to VCs, venture capitalists, where they're, putting infinite money until something works. And we don't have that ecosystem here in Europe. So it's unfair that there is a public discussion and public support for projects. I don't think so. It's probably something that we need also, right? Like some sort of, if we don't have this VC system that can pour money into projects, and given the current geopolitical state, it would be worth considering having a public source of funding. That,
And also, I don't think we should admire the American system. I think that's not the future of Europe is not going to be replicating Silicon Valley here. We should do something better. And the better is not going to be VC, because the VC model in Silicon Valley is that they pour money to 10 companies, one of them succeeds, and they have to be hyper-scaling, right? They have to be crazy fast, and it leads into this business of attention economy, which is a really bad way to build society.
It's been kind of negative for our society.
And all of those kind of things. We should be building good, but it's always easy to say, do good, but nobody's a charity here. We need to pay our rents and whatever we have. So where we go.
So I think there are a few different ways to think about it. On the one hand, you could say we're going to have a tech ecosystem that's entirely open source and entirely funded with basically taxpayer money, whether that's taxpayer money from the EU or national governments or whatever. And we have this sort of free software foundation mentality across the whole of Europe. That's one option, and that could work, and that might actually work pretty well, because a relatively small amount of tax money, relative to all the tax money that's collected across Europe, would be a huge fund for products. And that would be really interesting. There are, of course, problems like if we build a whole lot of free software in Europe, it's not just free for Europe, it's free for everybody. So we are basically, as taxpayers, funding software that can be used all over the world. Okay, so maybe that's not a big issue, but I'm guessing that for some taxpayers, they don't want to just pay for software to be given away. So that's one model. The other end of it is a sort of commercial model. So it doesn't have to be a Silicon Valley sort of commercial model, but in the end, if you have multiple companies building competitive products, you get some benefits. You get maybe more localization. Software in Finland and software in Spain, can address different needs of the markets there. You have a bit more competition and a bit more innovation, maybe a bit more velocity. So you can have, these are the two kind of extremes at the end. There's another thing that could happen, which, nobody's, I don't think there are any plans to look at this, but conceptually could happen, which is that the EU effectively builds a set of software for itself across various topics, but then contributes like the core part of it to being open source and allows other people to build on top of that their own commercial products. So the EU basically funds the core, not just in isolation, but in a kind of a real world environment. So you have the EU office suites or whatever. So there are lots of different options out there. The thing is that you've also got thousands of open source projects all going in different directions. So how do you get this coordination together is a tricky topic.
And so we have skills here. We have devs. We know how to build software in Europe. That's no problem. But there's an additional problem in this one. We run an agency, very highly talented people writing especially mobile software. If European Union would give us, let's say, €1 million, we would be fixing a lot of these attention to detail design things and all of those things. But how would they design? Which agency going to get the money? How do you know? Here's a bunch of money, and there's going to be 1,000 agencies who want to have that money. How do you decide who get the money? We're going to end up spending €1 million to figure out who gets the €1 million.
Yeah.
And there's going to be this difficulties. There's always this kind of fairness that comes with European Union, which I think is a good foundation to have. But it adds a problem of this one. You can't just say, okay, you guys do that.
Right.
We know we could do that, but others can do it as well. So it wouldn't be fair to just give it to us. And all of these kind of things are a problem. But one thing that we talked about earlier, which I think is I've been thinking a lot, but there's a foundation of things, is we should make sure that by regulations, we don't drive the business into this vendor locking approach. That's one of those things in American businesses that they try to capture you. They do everything to lock you in, and then they start extracting money from you. And it's impossible to move. Once you're in Google, you're in Google. You don't move to Microsoft. There's no scenario where you go to, okay, I'm going to shift to Microsoft. And the same way, the other way around. And the thing, if we can build an ecosystem here where it's very easy for users to switch between competing platforms, that drives a competition that forces these businesses to create software that people want to use instead of have to use, right? And we talked about this, I think yesterday or one other day, that the digital identity kind of strange way is a really core of this kind of thing. Because now you're locked into Google sign-on, you're locked into Microsoft sign-on, when you have Google Docs, the docs themselves are not difficult to move, that the permission models are difficult to use. But if everything would be foundation on a kind of digital identity that is controlled by government entities or European entities, and would be pervasive between the products, it would be actually quite easy to move around. And the idea of European Union as the entity that builds this kind of foundation, this kind of compatibility layer between different services, different cloud services. We go into Nextcloud. We like Nextcloud as a company. The product needs improvement, but we're happy to work to build them. But we don't want to see a world where Nextcloud is dominant, the only thing here. We want to see a world where we go to Nextcloud, but if they go bad, we're going to go something else, or somebody else can move between, right?
Well, sorry, Enrique, I think this is a massive opportunity because you can kind of see a world where you have Nextcloud coming out of Germany, and France has a lot of great open source software products, really good. In fact, maybe even a bit more polished and mature, like Marina is really a good office suite. And you don't want a world where you have these two big competing ones, and then you got another one in another place, where you basically just end up having the same lock-in, but you get the kind of the negative side effect, which is that each one is not big enough. I mean, Office, Microsoft Office, Google Workplace, they have global reach, so they've got that scale. If we're not going to get that scale in Europe if you have two sort of small, mid-sized competing software suites. It's going to be a lose-lose for everybody, I think. So we need to find some way to make to get the scale and allow us to play in a whole European market. I mean, this is a theme across lots of topics, but the whole of Europe is a market we need to open up. Not sure how we do that, but it's probably a longer conversation.
Mm-hmm. But from some of the discussions yesterday, there's like three things of funding that's related from software. One of them is direct money, like the Collabora CEO was saying. The best thing to do is to buy a subscription. That's the best thing to do because they can plan the team for long term. Fully agree with this one. Then there's people who say, well, we need European funding because we need to scale up or do a crunch. So, for example, F-Droid got European funding to do a full redesign of their software, which was badly needed, and they couldn't do it otherwise. And the new design actually looks pretty good. Now it's a modern piece of software that looks good. Great. And then there's the third part of this, that is not direct funding, but is forcing fair competition. So basically, if you can't compete against free with paid product, it's impossible. So this American way of Gmail is free, all of these things, you have to force a fair playground here with regulations. So you have to create a setup where it's no longer, you can't do this unfair tactic. So all of those three things have to be solved. But what do you see what is the European Union role in this one? Of course, everybody says money, but that's the easy discussion. But there's other things that we need to do. There's regulations, the identity, digital euro, all of these kind of things is creating foundation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're also talking about the standardization, right? Like if we want to do things in common and having different options, we need to. It's always this funny discussion, like one more standard, and then we end up with 16 instead of the 15 we have. But that's going to be important when we start having, as you're saying, like one big player in France, another one in Germany. the way the European Union is structured is how it is, right? We are like different countries and communities with different cultures, ways of doing things. So it's important to make sure that we can interoperate with each other. In my opinion, but that's a larger conversation, I think this needs to be implemented also at the taxation level and the commercial level. So it's hard to have unified market when the rules are not the same. And again, like very far away from coding and software, but that was part of what the Mario Draghi proposal was, I think last year, that we need to start taking seriously the unification at the tax level and stuff. But at the software level, I think that's going to be very important. We have Nextcloud, which we know can start using different Office alternatives. It can start connecting with different mail servers. If we are using this French alternative, we would like to make sure that we are able to interoperate with the documents that we already have, whether they're in Collabora or any other alternative. And yeah, that's.
But this is good. This is kind of, it's interesting. Like what you say about this approach and what you say, it would be quite interesting role for European Union to build the kind of the reference implementation kind of a thing. You go on and we pour a lot of money, because we know European Union projects are kind of wasteful. They spend a lot of money just to think about money. But if the end is that we're going to have a cloud service, a Google replacement that works but might not be great, but is fully interoperable with other companies. Companies can go, okay, we don't like the bits of Office. We're going to put the Office there. You're going to put Collabora Office there, and you can put there. But everything, all the parts would be changeable, and multiple companies could then start building pieces. Okay, we want to build the chat client for this one. And they all work together with maybe digital identity and so on. So that would create a competition in here where businesses can make money on top of the foundation by building good software people want to buy, right?
So I think there's some examples of this existing in different industries already across Europe. I mean, think about in the banking industry, the SEPA payment system. You can pay from Spain to Finland to Germany to France, all using the same payment network, the same payment system. And that didn't happen by accident. That was something that was brought on to harmonize bank payments across Europe. So the EU does have a role to create these sort of harmonized environments that reduce friction. And I don't think, so personally, I don't think the EU should be funding a lot of programs, funding software engineering or software product development. I don't think that makes sense. I think we still want to have a marketplace, but I think it should be funding programs to harmonize or reduce friction, to create and have a bit more vision as to what a European software ecosystem looks like, which is a kind of an open system that allows players to come in and create real value. Not sort of not hold value and keep people from moving around, but create that openness. So the EU does have a role to play, but it's a tricky one because it needs a lot of vision. So I think it needs, for example, the open source community to bring its brain power, maybe not its engineering activity yet, but its brain power, and also a sense of optimism and open source community is great. I mean, it's sort of famous for wanting to change the world and not do things from a commercial gain perspective. And I think the EU could really tap into this spirit to say, let's create a software ecosystem that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. You've got America driven by Silicon Valley. In China, it's driven by somewhat the state's requirements for how the state wants to run the country. So that's kind of centralized. So we can create something completely unique here. But it's going to take a lot of vision. I
think one concrete good example where we could head to is the Mastodon or the Fediverse approach. Because what's happening there is really cool. Mastodon is not the perfect social network. It's not a replacement for Twitter or whatever.
Right.
But it's a very interesting platform now, because what we now seeing it's evolving beyond the first generation of just short messaging or microblogging. Because now you have services like PixelFed, that is an Instagram type of thing, but it's compatible with your Mastodon accounts. And then there's this project called Bonfire, which is built on top of that one, a community like things, and they're still compatible to each other. But what this creates is creates an opportunity for businesses to go, it's impossible to create your own social network, but now you can create a thing. Let's say a community. You create a community that is already connected to things. So you already have the user in there. You don't have to start from zero, because creating communities is difficult, because there's no value in a community until there's users, and you don't get users because there's no community. So you can't create from zero. But now you have a platform where you can create something that is already kind of halfway there. So you can build business on top of that one. And if we had more of that in Europe, where you don't have to start from zero, you can start from a foundation where already people are kind of around there, and you can only build the USP. You just go, this is my thing, right, and we are very good at this. That would be quite interesting to do. That would be a real ecosystem. And what I want to see, like, I have no problem people making money from software. I actually have no problem people making money from advertisement either. I think that's a fair model, as long as you're transparent and ethical the way you do advertisement. And all of those kind of things are fine. And I want to build a kind of level playground where good software sells, and not was the one that kind of locked you in. Let's see where it leads.
Yeah, the Fediverse is a very interesting example. We have even seen experiments of running software, right? Where you could have like different instances of people that are tracking the runs they're doing or their bike rides, and you can aggregate them on your own Fediverse. So I think it reflects very well also the reality that in Europe we have many different national realities, and it would be a good way to reflect the underlying substance.
Yeah. Anyways, I think we need to head back to FOSDEM.
We do.
We're going to be talking again, I'd say, anything else? Or
nothing. If this is going to be published after FOSDEM, so we can't say meet us as FOSDEM, but
Cool. Then thanks for watching, and talk to you next time.
Thank you, folks.